How many unread books do you currently have sitting on your shelf right now? Or, maybe piled up on your nightstand? Or just sitting there haunting you in your digital library? If just thinking about that pile gives you a slight wave of anxiety or guilt, hey, you are absolutely not alone. The source material we're exploring today taps directly into that super familiar feeling of information overload, and it has some incredible insights into exactly why we feel this way. So, to understand why we feel so overwhelmed all the time, let's just look at the math. A decade ago, it was said that the total amount of information in the entire world doubled every 2 years. And honestly, that was already fast. But today, the source notes that global information is doubling every 6 months. It's mathematically impossible to keep up using traditional reading methods. The sheer volume of what we're expected to know is just exploding. And that brings us to a pretty stark realization. Back in the 1960s and 70s, there was this popular concept of the erudite, a person who could realistically know a little bit about everything. Because back then, with the limited flow of information, you could actually grasp the general scope of human knowledge. But the source declares that this era of knowing everything is officially dead. We have crossed the point of no return, for sure. So here is our agenda for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the overload crisis, then explore the wounded student. Third, we'll see how to reclaim childlike learning, then break down the photo reading method, and finally wrap up with its global adoption. Let's start with Section 1, the overload crisis. Trying to navigate this endless flood without a specialized system? Well, it's basically a recipe for burnout. If we don't have a reliable way to sort the wheat from the chaff, to quickly decide what information is actually worth our time and what to ignore, our brains essentially just short circuit. The speaker in the text paints this really vivid picture. Without this filtering skill, your brain just wants to shut down, sit on the couch, and say, "Are you crazy? This is impossible." Moving on to Section 2, the wounded student syndrome. The text introduces this fascinating concept called wounded student syndrome. It argues that traditional schools essentially beat our natural questioning instincts right out of us. Instead of being encouraged to ask why we're reading a book, we were simply told, just sit down and read it. This rigid environment allegedly creates a deep psychological block, leading to the severe anxiety we feel whenever we're faced with a mountain of unread information today. Let's detail exactly how the syndrome manifests. Because we were scolded or punished for not meeting these rigid, kind of unnatural criteria back in school, we developed a deep-seated fear. It's exactly why looking at 5, 10, or 100 unread books fills us with absolute dread. We've literally been programmed to think, I can't do this. The trauma of the traditional classroom left us feeling totally inadequate when it comes to processing massive amounts of data. All right, Section 3, reclaiming childlike learning. Now think about babies and toddlers for a minute. The text enthusiastically points out that their natural brain operates by probing, tasting, observing closely, and asking a million questions. This incredibly dynamic, highly sensory and inquisitive method is exactly how our brains are naturally wired to absorb the world, long before the rigid school system intervened and told us to sit still. So the crucial point here is that this methodology, photo reading, it doesn't actually teach you anything supernatural, right? Instead, it simply unlocks the innate genius that literally every human is already born with. The brain's natural goal is to constantly move, develop, and seek answers to questions. By reverting back to this natural state, we can process information in a way that feels a lot more like play rather than an exhausting chore. Which brings us to Section 4, the photo reading methodology. 25,000 words per minute. No way, right? But yes, the instructor in the text explicitly states that this system is designed to help participants eventually train their brains to swallow information at this incredible rate. Now, obviously, that sounds totally impossible based on traditional reading, but remember, the core premise here is that this isn't traditional reading at all. It's about bypassing those old, painfully slow habits and tapping into the brain's full capacity. So how does it work? To achieve this, the training relies on a really rigorous 5-day intensive format, and the instructor explicitly promises that there are 0 boring 9-hour lectures. Instead, it's this rapid-fire cycle. You get 2 minutes of theory, boom, 5 minutes of practice, and it just repeats over and over. Each step builds consecutively on the last. It's designed to be dynamic, highly active, and deeply engaging, which basically forces the brain to adapt quickly. And the purported benefits of this system? Well, they're massive. The text claims it leads to drastically faster learning and superior memory retention. But more than that, it highlights subconscious integration, which is basically bridging that gap between your conscious, struggling effort and your brain's massive subconscious processing power. And perhaps most importantly for anyone with wounded student syndrome, it completely eliminates the fear of unread books. A giant stack of 100 books goes from being a total nightmare to an exciting playground. Finally, let's look at Section 5, Global Adoption and Application. To ground all these massive claims, the text provides a really interesting historical timeline. You see, this system isn't just some brand new internet fad. It was actually founded back in 1985, making this its 40th anniversary. What's particularly fascinating, though, is its adoption in Japan. About 15 years ago, Japan, which is a culture super well known for enthusiastically adopting cutting-edge self-development tech, began heavily integrating this system, and today they have the highest number of certified instructors globally. And this system has some wildly unexpected, high-profile adopters. I mean, this isn't just for college students cramming for exams. Major corporations like American Express and IBM have utilized this training for their own personnel, with IBM even hiring specialized instructors directly. But most surprisingly, the text states that at one point it was literally mandatory for judges in the Mexican Supreme Court across all 32 states to learn this exact system. Ultimately, the methodology goes way beyond simply finishing a novel faster on the weekend. It's really about overcoming limits in careers, scientific research, and business. Think about it. If you're restricted by the sheer volume of new methodologies, research, and data coming out in your field, your professional growth is completely capped. Processing information faster removes that cap entirely. And there's this brilliant quote from the source that I think perfectly summarizes the entire core philosophy we've explored today. When you can quickly process information, the lid is simply lifted off your potential. The boundaries disappear. Wow, it is just a really powerful reminder that our ability to handle information directly correlates with our ability to actually grow and succeed in this crazy modern world. Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. Will you continue to let your traditional reading speed dictate the boundaries of your ambition? The source material strongly suggests that a different, far more expansive way of learning isn't just a fantasy, it's entirely possible. It's a super compelling argument that really challenges all of us to rethink our limits.